We went to the moon 6 times in 3 years, then stopped for 50 years. It's the greatest cosmic cliffhanger of all time.
They saw aliens and got warned off.
That's one theory. The evidence for it is pretty thin, but I get why people wonder. The core question everyone's asking is the same. If we could do it back then with computers that had less processing power than a modern smart toaster, why can't we do it now with these supercomputers? We should be able to just hail a celestial Uber and head up there whenever we want.
Because the landing was faked, filmed in a desert.
That's another story, but here's an alternative explanation that actually fits the evidence. Going to the moon was never a sustainable program. It wasn't designed to be.
It was the most expensive, most politically volatile one-off performance humanity has ever staged.
Think of Apollo not as a scientific triumph alone,
but as history's most frantic relocation project.
It needed the Saturn V, a rocket so big it had its own weather system, and was powered entirely by Cold War competition.
The second Armstrong's dusty postcard arrived, the instant we won,
the driving force vanished. The moon was conquered, the Soviet Union was beaten, and suddenly everyone looked at the balance sheet. And the balance sheet was screaming. Instead of asking, why haven't we been back? Maybe we should ask, how did we manage to go 6 times in 3 years?
Space isn't just expensive, it's ridiculously expensive. The Apollo program cost around $280 billion in today's money. That wasn't just for rockets. It was the price of a 99.999999% guarantee that nothing would go wrong. Every component, from the heat shield to the astronaut's toothbrush, had to be custom built to survive a 250,000-mile commute through a vacuum. Imagine buying a sedan, but getting charged for an entire naval fleet because every bolt had to be certified to survive a solar flare. Apollo was a destination mission. They went, they collected rocks, they came home. Zero infrastructure, zero reusability. The Saturn V, that glorious, majestic skyscraper of fire, was a one-use, disposable soda bottle. Once you drank the contents, you threw away the bottle, dismantled the factories that made it, and laid off the workforce.
Wait, they threw away the whole rocket every time?
Every single time. 6 trips meant 6 rockets, 6 enormously expensive pieces of space hardware, each destined to burn up in the atmosphere or sink into the ocean. Imagine planning a vacation. Instead of buying a plane ticket, you buy a private 747, build a private airport, and hire 10,000 people to manage it. Then, after one round trip, you immediately scrap the plane for parts and build a new one from scratch for your next vacation.
That's insane. No wonder we stopped.
Exactly. You can't run a railway if you scrap the locomotive after every journey. That's essentially what happened with Apollo. That's what that short-sighted thinking cost us. When the program ended, we didn't just stop launching, we dismantled the entire industrial ecosystem. The Saturn V was retired, its factories were repurposed, and the engineers who built it moved on. NASA's workforce plummeted from 400,000 to 170,000. We lost both the physical infrastructure and the vital institutional knowledge. So to go back, we couldn't simply dust off old blueprints. We had to relearn it all from the ground up, rebuilding with modern standards, safer designs, and sustainable technology.
The second major problem? The attention span of politics. Building a super heavy-lift rocket takes 15 years. Space programs run on decades. Politics runs on 4-year election cycles. Here's the pattern. Every time a new administration rolls in, they look at the previous administration's rocket, which is usually 80% finished and 100% over budget, and say, we need our own vision. They cancel the old rocket, spend 5 years designing a new one, and rename the project. This turns space exploration into a perpetually half-finished thesis paper.
Come on, it can't be that bad.
It's worse. We had the space shuttle, which was supposed to make space cheap. It didn't. It cost around $209 billion in 2010 dollars over its lifetime. A single launch averaged around $450 to $775 million. But at least it wasn't canceled mid-development. We had Constellation, which was going to take us back to the moon. Canceled. We had the Ares rockets. Also canceled. It's a graveyard of ambitious ideas, killed not by physics, but by the mundane reality of the electoral cycle. Why build a lunar base today when you can promise a better lunar base to voters in 4 years? It's always easier to promise the future than to fund the present.
Now for the terrifying physics. The moon is a terrible place to visit, not just because there's no air, but because the universe is actively trying to melt your DNA. I'm talking about radiation. To get to the moon, you have to punch through the Van Allen belts, 2 giant donut-shaped regions of highly energetic charged particles trapped by Earth's magnetic field.
Right, the Van Allen belts. That proves the moon landing was fake. Radiation would kill them.
That's a common claim, but the Apollo crews didn't hang out in the belts. They calculated the fastest possible route and sprinted through for minimized exposure. They spent less than an hour passing through, and the spacecraft's walls provided shielding. They got a radiation dose, sure, but it was survivable, kind of like running through a heavy rainstorm. You get wet, but you don't drown.
So the radiation was real but manageable for a short trip.
Exactly, but living there, even for a few weeks, means exposing yourself to an unshielded cosmic shooting range. Without Earth's magnetic field, a lunar habitat must be buried under meters of regolith to protect inhabitants from relentless cosmic rays and solar storms. The Apollo astronauts could largely ignore this threat. They were only short-term visitors, in and out before the worst could happen. But future settlers faced the monumental task of building a permanent subterranean home in an airless void. Living on the moon isn't a luxury resort. It's like living in a high-tech basement during a perpetual nuclear storm.
For 50 years, there was no compelling reason to go back. The scientific community wanted to return, absolutely, but science doesn't allocate federal budgets. Politicians do, and politicians need something voters care about. During the Cold War, beating the Soviets justified every dollar, every risk, every sacrifice. It was about national pride, technological superiority, and proving that democracy could out-innovate communism. Once we won, once the flags were planted and the photos were taken, the moon became just another line item competing with healthcare, infrastructure, and defense spending. But now the conversation has shifted from winning a race to securing the bag. New players like China are planning lunar missions for the 2030s, and we've discovered something Apollo missed: water ice. If you have ice, you have oxygen to breathe and hydrogen for rocket fuel. The moon is no longer just a rock, it's a gas station for the rest of the solar system. I actually have a whole separate video diving into the details of this new lunar gold rush and why everyone is suddenly rushing to the South Pole.
So NASA is going back. The program is called Artemis, named after Apollo's twin sister.
But is this just going to be another canceled program?
The risk is real, but Artemis has a different goal: permanence. This time, we're building to stay, creating a lunar base that serves as a gateway to Mars. It's our first attempt to become an interplanetary species, and we're starting on the closest rock we can find. Instead of starting from scratch, NASA is taking a hybrid approach with the Space Launch System, SLS. The rocket incorporates engines and boosters from the Space Shuttle program, proven hardware already tested in flight. It's like building a new Ferrari, but reusing the turn signal stocks from your grandpa's 1988 race winner because they're already in the garage and have a track record of performance. The plan also has a twist: the gateway. Instead of going straight to the surface, NASA is building a small space station in lunar orbit, a near rectilinear halo orbit, or NRHO.
A near recti what?
Near rectilinear halo orbit. It's a stable orbit where a spacecraft can stay close to the moon, yet requires very little fuel to maintain its position. This makes it an incredibly efficient long-term parking spot, the ultimate lunar rest stop. The SLS launches the Orion crew capsule. Astronauts travel to the gateway in Orion, dock with the station, and then transfer to a separate lander for the trip down to the surface. After their moon mission, they return to Gateway, rest, resupply, and then Orion takes them home.
But why not just go straight down like Apollo did?
Apollo could because they were there for 3 days. Gateway lets you stay for weeks, store equipment, and have a permanent escape vehicle in orbit. It's the difference between camping and moving in.
The biggest threat to this lunar village isn't radiation or the vacuum of space.
Aliens! I knew it! We're finally talking about aliens! The biggest threat up there is them! They've got secret bases on the dark side.
I was about to say dust.
Dust? That's the big problem? Not aliens? Dust? The tiny thing?
Not just any dust, lunar dust. On Earth, wind and water erode in smooth particles over time, but the moon has no atmosphere, so there's no weathering. As a result, every single particle is a tiny, jagged, electrically charged razor blade, unworn for billions of years. This fine, abrasive, and electrostatically charged regolith is arguably the single most damaging hazard in the solar system. It clings to everything, smells like burnt gunpowder, grinds through seals, jams machinery, and is toxic if inhaled. Apollo astronauts returned with their suits partially shredded after just a few days on the surface. One astronaut described it as being like bringing a piece of the moon back with you, and not in a good way. If we can't beat the dust, we can't stay.
When are we going? NASA's targeting mid-2027 for Artemis III, the first crewed landing since Apollo 17. But given how politics and physics play together, you might want to pencil in 2028 or 2029. Although the timeline keeps sliding, the trajectory is clear. The hardware is being built, the missions are being flown. We're closer than we've been in 50 years.
I'll believe it when I see the live stream.
Fair enough, but here's what I believe. We stopped going because it was a ruinously expensive sprint. We're going back because we now see the moon as the stepping stone to the stars. The human race has never been good at staying put. We're the species that looks at every horizon and says, "What's over there?" We crossed oceans in wooden boats and climbed mountains simply because they existed. The moon is just a 250,000-mile dare. Becoming an interplanetary species isn't just about survival or science. It's about identity. It's who we are. So keep watching the sky. History suggests we're stubborn enough to pull it off.